How are you guys doing?
We're good.
Good. So we're back with another spiritual gift, and we have Crystal. And what is your spiritual gift?
Well, the spiritual gift I spoke about was mercy showing. Yeah. It was a surprise for me.
Yeah.
It was.
Was that pretty top of your...
It was. It was one of my top, and I thought, there's no way. And so it was really interesting. It made me dive in even more, I think, because I was like, I don't know if this test is right.
Yeah.
But then once you get in there and you start seeing what it is, it goes a lot more into things that are not just like acts of kindness. And that was kind of what I guess my first initial thought was. Mercy is, is being kind all the time, and I have moments that I'm judgmental, and I have expectations for people, and they don't always meet them the way I feel like they should. And so I thought, how can I also be a mercy shower,
Right.
So but then once you dig into what they talk about in the book, then you start to realize, oh, okay, yes, I do that. Yes, I do that. So it was definitely eye-opening for me.
Yeah, I think something we've learned so far about all the gifts is there's so many more facets to it than we think that there are.
Yeah.
And it's cool when you actually dive to it.
Yeah. This one I never heard of really in a sense before in that way. When we've talked about that.
Yeah.
The list of different spirit gifts of the spirit.
Yeah.
Just because sometimes it's not in the same order or the same name or the same reference, and it's not like you go to the fruit of the spirit and it's
exactly
and you do the song to it and the whole 9 yards. This one is a little different, and I think that is awesome, and this was kind of an eye-opener.
And you've already had somebody talk about helps, right?
Yes.
So
Denise
so that was the other thing too, is okay, what's the difference between mercy showing and helps? Because again, it's your first thought is when you're showing something to someone, you're doing acts.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the difference, a lot of the things that I had to kind of figure out. So
cool. Yeah.
So did you have like a main Bible verse or two that you went over, and then there was also like a woman of the Bible that it was paired with.
Right.
So what were those?
So the woman, it was funny because the woman that they used was Naomi.
Hey.
So for me that was like, oh, I already know about that, but I didn't know all the things that they said. So then I was like, oh my gosh, So it was like, I wish I wouldn't have already wrote my book because I could have added some of this stuff in. But yeah, no. So they were using Naomi and her mentorship. And the way that she mentored and the things that she did to help Ruth. And it's funny because even at our banquet that we just had for our widows, Mr. Mallory spoke, and he used Naomi and talking about how she was repurposed. Her purpose started as one thing when she went to Moab, and she was able to love these Moab women as her own. But then her purpose changed when she went back to Bethlehem, and she had to teach her culture, and she had to teach, the things that, she was, she had to teach all of the things that Ruth was not familiar with, and mentor her to be able to live among those people.
Wow.
And it was.
That's pretty cool.
Let me tell you what, Mr. Mallory was bringing the word. Let me tell you, he was definitely.
I love it.
And he you probably won't get him in here, but he used how back in the day they would take feed sacks. And they would repurpose them as dresses. And he was talking about the repurposing that Naomi did. In her bitterness, she was able to be repurposed for something else. And so, in the same respect, she knew, when. She knew who to speak to. She knew how to speak to him. She knew the questions to ask Ruth. All of those things was her showing mercy, in a to her, because she was trying to mentor her and teach her the things of her God, but then also in her own bitterness, in her own sadness.
She had to go outside of herself, didn't she?
Right. And so, it was great. And that was where they kind of, that was a lot of what they were talking about is, she knew when to act, she knew how to act, she knew how to teach her the customs to make Boaz understand her, all those things. And it was, but it all started with a relationship.
Yeah.
Ruth already trusted her. Ruth already knew she wanted everything that she had.
Yeah.
And so when we build those relationships with women through little things, then we can show them, the bigger things. And that's a lot of, how we show mercy to one another. It's not necessarily restraining and, where we think God shows us so much mercy. That's where we learn how to show mercy. But it's not that same, like, life or death mercy, that we're showing to other people.
Yeah.
It's almost like a patience kind of.
Yeah.
It goes hand in hand as part of mercy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the verses that she talked about in the book was 2 Corinthians 1:3. Praise the God and the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort. And that's where our mercy comes from. He's the God of all comfort, and our job is to be that channel where people, he can communicate through us to those people, to those hurting people. And that's the part of mercy. It's more than just bringing a meal. It's finding those people that, you see it in their face and that they need you, and they know they need a moment, or they need a prayer, or they need a smile, or they, and then extending beyond just that one act to investing in them. So. Yeah,
in that the same, you say, how you doing? And they go, I'm doing fine. But you can see the demeanor, you can see the, the face, you can see that it's really not. It doesn't match the words. Yeah.
Or we say how we're doing as a greeting, but we don't really stop to listen to how they're doing.
You go, oh, okay. You walk away. Yeah.
We had a foreign exchange student when Zeb and I were in high school, and Zeb said, how's everything going? And he said, people ask me how I'm doing, but then they just walk away. And,
really?
And it was like, it was a cultural thing for him. Like, he didn't understand. If you ask me, why don't you wait to listen to what I say? And it was kind of an eye-opener for us. Like, if we're going to ask, we need to be willing to stop and listen.
Yes.
So, it's not just a passing greeting. It's passing
it's,
greetings are like, hey.
And how you doing? Sometimes it feels like,
becomes a passing greeting.
Yes, it does, and that's not good.
Yeah. And then we're not seeing hearts, and we're not seeing, hurt.
Wow.
Yep. She also used the verse Matthew 10:44, whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones because he is a disciple, truly I tell you, he will never lose his reward. And, I think, again, it's just seeing those people that need that cup of cold water. It's like, she doesn't just say a cup of water, she says a cup of cold water. And, I mean, the scripture says, and so it's funny, it's like those little details that you read more into, the deeper you get in your knowledge of the word. Every word has a specific reason. So when you look, it's not, it's understanding they may need water, but they might need more than just the water. They might need cold water because it might be that hot day that they need it, what I mean? And so it's like, it's interesting, to again just see people where they are and acknowledge what they need. Maybe they're not willing to tell you, or maybe you're running by too fast to notice. And
being
so
aware.
Slowing down to be able to see those people, to be able to show mercy.
Yeah. And you find yourself sometimes, I got to get somewhere.
Yeah.
Do I have time to stop and pray with this person? Do I ignore their crying? They got tears. Do you stop and say, are you, Yeah. So we have to, I think that's a good one.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
For sure.
So you had a group of women. So what did you share with them more than what we've already talked about? Was there anything more that you shared with them?
Well, I did an acrostic for mercy because I was trying to wrap my head around it all. And so I gave them that. And a lot of the women were in the same place that were in my classes, were in the same place I was, where they said, I didn't really think this was one of my gifts.
Yeah.
And so when I said, oh, good, I didn't either. And they were like, oh, thank God, So it was funny because we were all kind of like, oh. But when they left, they said, thank you, because now I understand, and now I have no excuse to not go and do it,
show mercy.
And I felt the same way. I was like, I know, I read into it, now I can't deny it, and now I know what it is, so I think that was good. But the acrostic I gave them was basically, I just took the things that she said in the book and tried to pinpoint them. So and then I did M, merrily showing mercy, because sometimes we're not always doing it with a cheerful heart. God asks us to do things with joy, and joy is the only thing that that I feel like comes from Jesus, that we can show people the difference between joy and happiness. And, you know, and joy is in the midst of those hard things. And if we can convey joy to people and help them understand that it doesn't always mean I'm smiling and laughing, but it means that I am at peace in certain situations and I'm able to, you know, move through them because I know that ultimately I'm His, you know. And so when we're doing it merrily, you know, we're getting the joy from it, but then it's also, you know, a sweet fragrance to Him, you know, because we're doing it with that joy.
Yes.
And then empathizing and sympathizing with others. Sometimes we sympathize with others, but we don't always show that empathy because we think we understand where they're coming from, or we think we know, you know, what they're thinking, or, you know, those kind of things. And it's very hard sometimes, but it's one of those things where we have to just empathize and not need to know everything about it, just need to know that this is how they feel. Zeb and I did a marriage conference. A couple of the couples in our church all went, and one of the things that they were talking about is the reason we react is usually doesn't have anything to do with our spouse. It's because of something, you know, deeper. And so a lot of times that empathy is just not really understanding where this is all coming from anyway. You know, the hurt is coming from somewhere else. And sometimes even the good things, you know, I realized that I needed those affirmations. I need my children and my husband to say our meal was good. You know, and I didn't know why I needed it, but I needed it because I was always told that when I was a kid. Everything I did, my parents were always like, wow, great job. You know, you did this, you did that. You know what I mean? And I always had that, which is such a blessing as a kid to have, but I didn't realize that it was also the fuel.
It inbred.
And so when my husband would eat dinner and not say, well, that was a great meal, you know, in his mind I ate it, so it was good. You know, in my mind I was like, what did you do? What did I do wrong? I'm so sorry. The biscuits aren't right, you know. And so, you know, and he would say, I don't know why you're apologizing all the time. But in my mind, you were saying it's not a good meal because you didn't compliment it.
You didn't say something.
And so it was just a misunderstanding of something so much deeper than what I knew. And so many times the empathy is just so much deeper. You know, it's coming from a place that we don't understand, and we don't need to understand it, but we still need to empathize and sympathize.
I just one point is I had a friend that had never been really sick at all, ever, you know, no problem, you know, she'd always been well. She had no empathy for somebody that got sick until she had an accident, and she was on the couch for I don't know how many months. But she learned and understood empathy from that point because she was out and down. So sometimes it does come from and even those people with chronic pain and chronic you know,
and we don't illnesses that we don't understand. You know, a headache is not just a headache to them. It's I'm in the bed with my eyes shut and the cold, and you know what I mean. And
just get up and get out. You know, walk around. Get over it. Get over it. I know.
But because they're not wired like us, we you know, we tend to just not be able to sympathize and empathize.
Yeah, really. So, good job. Yeah.
And then the R was relationship building. You know, becoming people's friends, not just. Sometimes we're so good at dropping a meal, or we're so good at, you know, sending a text, which are all great things, but that's not a connection that they're going to be able to use. You know, that's a very, you know, it's a fix in that moment, but if they know the relationships behind that meal, or the text, you know, because the texts come even when things aren't bad, you know what I mean, then it's a lot easier for them to connect with us.
That's a big job.
It is, and it's an exhausting job when you have lots of people, you know. But it is, you know, and I told the ladies when I was talking to them, you know, pick 2 or 3 people in your church, and make it your mission to show mercy to those 2 or 3 people, and do it well, and do it for a year, and then you've got those relationships, and you can invest in 2 or 3 more. You know, you don't have to do it with every person that you're in small group with, just because you learned that this is your mercy shower. You know,
wear yourself out. You're no good to anybody,
and then you're wearing yourself too thin.
And
so then you're not really building relationships anymore.
And
so
if you have those 2 or 3, they can then go and find 2 or 3, and it ripples out a lot more healthfully.
And I think that that's kind of what we learned with all the gifts. Like, all of our gifts are connecting to other people, and they're firing their gifts and allowing them to use those gifts. And when they see, oh, this is all it is, well, I can do that. You know, I mean, and then it just kind of spurts from there. And then pretty soon, if everybody in the church is using their gifts, you know, what a powerful, you know, community that is, you know.
It's almost like we need to go back and have a update or refresher or a reunion or something to say, okay, where have you used your gift now, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a little check-in.
Yeah, a little check-in, check-up.
And then the C was communicate God's acceptance of all.
Mm.
You know, sometimes we don't always have that acceptance of all, you know,
Yeah.
so we have to remember that, you know, we were all in those places where we didn't have God and we didn't have hope, and now we do. So, you know, just communicating that that's the ultimate. Like, my friendship is great for you, but your relationship with God is going to be 10 times better.
Yeah.
If you just have my friendship, then you've missed everything, and I've missed explaining it to you.
Yeah.
You know, so that's, you know, another piece that our job is to point people to Him. We have to be careful not to get in the way.
Yeah.
You know, because we learn to love people and we learn to enjoy them, and you know, but if we're not ultimately pointing them to Him, then we haven't done what our gift is called to do,
Yeah.
calling us to do. So,
Yeah.
and then the Y was yield to God's call to encourage, pray for, and believe in others. And you know, that's one of those things. I think when you learn your gifts, like you were saying, now what are you doing with them?
Yeah.
Because if we're not doing anything with them, then it doesn't really matter if we learned them or not.
Yeah, that made me just think I better do something with that. Better put that on my list.
Yeah.
What are we doing with it?
Yeah.